Not all waiver wire heroes are created equally. A lot of the obvious pickups are made on Sunday, right? You figure out who you're going to bid for, but sometimes the best pickups are the ones you make a week early. Last week told you to stash Woody Marks. If you did that, you don't have to pay a cent on the waiver wire this week. So let's look ahead to week 5 and beyond, figure out who might be valuable right now, and you can get absolutely free. Now we'll actually start with a player that became a lot more valuable after the Monday night game, and that's Malik Washington in Miami, because somebody has to fill the void that is Tyreek Hill. I mean, look, I don't think we need to wait for official word to know that he is done for the season and possibly for his Miami Dolphins career. The way things are going, maybe that's not the worst thing. But obviously, this is not great for the offense in and of itself, character issues aside. That's a big blow, and there's not really a lot of help floating around there in terms of wide receiver. The Dolphins were not a deep team at receiver to begin with. It's got to be a guy like Malik Washington. Remember they signed Nick Westbrook-Ikhine this offseason? Yeah, it's hard to remember that because he does not exist in this offense. It's basically been Hill, Waddle, a little bit of Malik Washington. That is it. And now Darren Waller has resurfaced. But look, they throw it to the wideouts quite a bit. And so Malik Washington is going to have to absorb some of these targets. And it's a lot, really, because if you think about this, the Dolphins, though it doesn't feel like they were a very good offense last year, and look, they weren't great, but still, they did score some points. And this team was 8th in total pass attempts just last season. And Tyreek Hill is vacating a total of 123 targets from a year ago. It's a lot to go around. Malik Washington will certainly not get nearly all of those, but he definitely becomes relevant. And say what you want about Tua in terms of how you feel about him, it doesn't matter. Tua Tagovailoa last year, 72.9% completion percentage, because they're having him throw a lot more short intermediate passes. Just get the ball out of your hands. And look, this is perfect for Malik Washington. Small, speedy receiver. This guy who's going to run those short intermediate routes, right? That's exactly what's going to get him the ball in his hands frequently. Jonnu Smith is not there anymore. Look, Darren Waller, again, might become a thing, but he's not going to get that many targets. He's more of a red zone target, as you saw. Washington now has a chance to get quite a bump in receptions, which gives him at least a floor in PPR. If there's a ceiling, it's the fact that it comes down to his speed. He's a smaller, speedy receiver. He has a 97th percentile burst score. For what it's worth, Player Profiler says that his closest comp in the pros is Zay Flowers. Now, he actually has just as good, maybe a little bit better speed than Zay Flowers, but he's not as good a receiver as Zay Flowers, and I'm not sure he ever will be. But at the same time, you can think similar skill set. This obviously is not the Ravens offense, but again, targets will now be there. This is Malik Washington's chance to do something. Now, if there's a team that needs help at running back, not even due to injury, just because they need somebody who's got just like a little bit of juice here, it's the Chiefs. And look, I'm the first one who does not want to get sucked in the trap of falling for any new Chiefs running back. And I've been saying this for years. But look, if there's also a team that can take a guy who is either a late round pick, an undrafted free agent, a kind of a nobody, and make him to at least somebody, it's the Chiefs. And so that's why I'm going to take a look at Brashard Smith. We actually saw Smith get a little bit involved in week 4 with 4 carries and 4 targets. And 4 is the magic number because we want a running back who can at least get over 4 yards per carry. Unlike, Isaiah Pacheco was right there, barely at 4 yards per carry. Kareem Hunt, 3.2 yards per carry. They can't just keep doing this, can they? Just running those 2 guys out there and basically not having a running game. You can't expect Smith to all of a sudden take over this role and become anything close to a workhorse. The Chiefs don't really use a running back as a workhorse anyways. But that's not what he needs. Just needs a role, right? Some more carries and specifically some more targets. They use him a lot as a receiver out of the backfield. We saw him in the preseason get work in the slot as a receiver. He can do that. And maybe this seems far-fetched, but let me take you back to the fact that, look, we were thinking Isaiah Pacheco would be the one that was fantasy relevant. He had a decent season before injury 2 seasons ago. Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th round pick, just like Brashard Smith. We have seen the Chiefs over the past several years in the Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes era make guys like Darrell Williams, Damian Williams, Jerick McKinnon. None of those were high draft picks, and they've all had fantasy relevance at one time or another. So don't tell me Brashard Smith can't at least be a thing. Now on the other side of the fantasy universe, we have the Tennessee Titans. All right, it's hard to make anything of this offense, though we have seen Elok Iomanner, a guy I've talked about on this very series for like 3 past weeks. Okay, I'm done with that now. But he has been fantasy relevant, until last week. So now they're going to get some help, possibly, if Tyjae Spears is activated. He's eligible to come off IR. No guarantee it will be this week, but he should be back pretty soon. And so why should I be interested in anyone, much less a running back in this offense? Well, maybe that's what this offense needs, is a little more versatility here, right? Tyjae Spears at least brings something to the backfield, can spell Pollard. He's a good pass catcher out of the backfield, and we've seen him be effective before. Not so much last year because, as you know, hardly anybody in the Titans offense was affected last year, just like this year. But look, as a rookie, Spears averaged 4.5 yards per carry, and talked about that receiving work. He was targeted 70 times in his first season. And last year, of course, was cut short due to injury, and still in those 12 games, he caught 30 passes. So he can bring at least something, in terms of PPR value here. He is a good runner at times. This offensive line, yes, is still a mess, but I still feel like there is progress to be made here. The offensive line, it's going to take some work. Cam Ward is at least an upgrade over Will Levis, and maybe the solution here is addition by subtraction. If somehow Calvin Ridley moves on, then like maybe they could just work with the young players from this point forward. Look, I'm not here trying to pump you up about Titans offense in general, but we know Tyjae Spears will have a role when he comes back, kind of as the 1B to Pollard's 1A. And for a fact that no matter how bad the Titans look, if something does happen to Pollard and then Spears gets the starting job, he's getting all the touches there. It may not be worth stashing Spears until we're sure he is on the way back, but, in some deeper leagues, you just can't afford to wait that long. You know what is worth doing right now? Download the DraftLane app. You can ask all your questions, whether it's waiver wire, trade, start sit, and more, anything you want. Use the DraftLane app or answer questions 24/7. Free download in the App Store or the Play Store. And if you use code ENDGAME in the promotion code section, you get 10 free credits. So it's absolutely risk-free. All right, tight end time. I promise I don't try to find some tight end to fit in here, but it just so happens that we have a rookie tight end who all of a sudden might emerge as, well, look, he already has emerged as the number 2 target in his offense. It's Mason Taylor of the Jets, because as I continue to say, because it continues to be true, the Jets don't have a number 2 receiver. They had Josh Reynolds, the veteran. He's been hurt. Honestly, they just don't have any receiver depth, and that's why we saw in Week 4, on Monday night against the Dolphins, Mason Taylor was right there behind Garrett Wilson in terms of target share, receptions, yards, all of that. Caught 5 passes for 65 yards. In fact, if a touchdown had gone to him instead of Wilson, he would have been the top scorer in that whole offense. Now, you probably heard a little bit of buzz about Taylor in the preseason. That just really like him. That's why they took him in the 2nd round. Taylor's a guy that really his workout metrics are just kind of average, right? He doesn't jump off the page with athleticism. His numbers in college don't jump off the page either. He did go to LSU, so of course, kind of hard to fight for targets as a tight end there. So much talent at receiver there, but still, look, Mason Taylor is a guy who is going to get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, because you might realize he's the son of Hall of Famer, former Dolphin, Jason Taylor, and that also makes him the nephew of Zach Thomas. He's got that length to make contested catches. He's a little bit more physical, even though he profiles more as a receiving tight end. He's not out there just to block. Jeremy Ruckert doesn't seem like he'll ever kind of emerge as a tight end that the Jets wanted. Mason Taylor is already emerging, in terms of his target share. Got 7 targets just in Week 4. So here we go. Look, if you're deep at tight end, Mason Taylor might not be too long before he becomes a very interesting streamer. Hey, it might even happen right here, Week 5, because the Jets are playing that Cowboys defense. And how about the other New York tight end? We know Malik Nabers is out, and so I did mention Darius Slayton. He's the obvious replacement in terms of that role as a receiver. But actually, for Week 4 in Jackson Dart's debut, which was mostly without Nabers, the players who tied for the team lead in targets were Wan'Dale Robinson and the tight end Theo Johnson. Now, Theo Johnson did have very good workout metrics. Theo Johnson did put up pretty good numbers at Penn State, which you know is basically a factory for NFL tight ends. I mean, there's several still in the NFL here at the pro level, Penn State tight ends. And Theo Johnson had some promise last year, but injuries just kept getting in the way. So we don't really know what could have been. Not that it really mattered with whatever they had at quarterback last year. And so, look, say what you will about Dart, whether you think he's got this high ceiling or not in this offense. But what happens a lot of times, these young quarterbacks, they like to hone in on those short intermediate routes, those easy targets, those big targets. The tight end a lot of times is a beneficiary, and without Malik Nabers out there, I wouldn't be surprised if Theo Johnson is consistently among the target leaders for the Giants. Take that for what it's worth, but again, we're talking tight ends here. Targets are valuable. And then another young receiver here, ready to make his season debut. You know, some people have been excited for Jimmy Horn Jr. in Carolina. I have a feeling that we're going to finally see him in Week 5 because Coach Dave Canales says, get ready to see Jimmy Horn Jr. Yeah, you know, Xavier Legette still injured. JT Sanders, the tight end, injured. Jalen Coker on IR. Looks like he's not ready yet. And so here we go. Jimmy Horn, this offense needs a spark. Just when you looked like they were riding the ship, then they got pounded again by the Patriots last week. So look, Jimmy Horn does bring something here. This is a guy that, look, he didn't really do a whole lot in college. He barely combined for 1,000 yards total in his final 2 seasons at Colorado. Also had some pretty decent competition for targets there with a guy named Travis Hunter. But look, a lot of people have talked up Jimmy Horn, had a nice preseason as well. And the word that keeps coming back when people are profiling him is diversity. He runs a diverse route tree, versatility. He can kind of do everything, right? Not going to be pigeonholed into one role. And so that could definitely play well with this Dave Canales offense. I'm not quite ready to plug and play Jimmy Horn Jr. yet, nor should you be. But also, this might be a good opportunity to shine, get that Dolphins defense in the Week 5 matchup. So let's take a look at exactly how much Horn is used, how much he's out there in the field, and if he does get targeted. All right, stash away. Those are some young players with promise that you might want to kind of sneakily grab here and there where you can off of the waiver wire before they become hot waiver wire pickups. And speaking of waiver wire, we've got that, Panic, Start Sit, everything you need to help win. It's going to be right here.